You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos Country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Get on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and joining me again, as always, is my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell. Nick, man, again, another episode we get to enjoy after a victory and an interesting opponent coming up here in the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you remember the last time the Titans came to town?
I am trying to think. Was that Well, it's been since Manning, right?
It was during the Manning era.
Was it? Okay.
Think about it. So what other teams have we played this year? So the schedule's, I guess, kind of cyclical. Maybe I'm off here. I just remember Matt Prater, I believe it was Matt Prater, hit that 64-yard field goal. So I think it would have been 2014? Now I'm all confused.
What's new, right?
Because the Broncos played the Titans in 2016 at Tennessee, and that was the game that essentially made the Broncos miss the playoffs that year. I think it was, Benny Fowler dropped the touchdown.
Yep.
I believe, yes. But yeah, no, I just remember Matt Prater, I think we were beating up on him pretty good, and Matt Prater hit that monster kick to send it over the uprights into, okay, so it was 2013. Okay. First inkling was right. So 2015 Super Bowl season, they played the Packers. 2013, yes. And then Matt Prater field goal to close the second half, 64 yards. And guess how many points that gave the Broncos? They're actually losing at halftime in that game, 21-20. Guess what the final score was?
If I remember right, Broncos had in the 50s, like 51.
Wow, 51-28. Man, good job. I'm impressed. That is pretty incredible. And my God, they were at 30 points going into the fourth quarter. If we can get to 30 points in this game, Broncos are going to win this one by double digits.
Yep.
So, man, how the times have changed. I know that we are in the era of offensive football, but my God, when you go from Peyton Manning to doesn't even matter who's next, you're going to see a little bit of a regression to the mean, but just kind of fun lamenting there, thinking about, God, how good that was back then. So I know that they choked in the Super Bowl era. Or in the Super Bowl that season, but I'll take it.
That was, I don't know. 2008 was that exciting season, obviously, or not 2008, 2011, sorry, with Tebow.
Against
where
all odds.
Every game was a heart attack, pretty much. And then 2013, yeah, just every game was fun to watch because you just never knew what was going to happen other than Broncos are going to score a lot of points. And I mean, that 51-48 victory over the Cowboys is still one of my favorite games of the Manning era.
Yeah.
And I mean, I know most teams, you don't want to offense explosion sometimes gets a little too crazy, but just the back and forth of seeing two great quarterbacks go at it was just a lot of fun.
That reminded me of the Rams-Chiefs game from last year. You know, it came down to turnovers in the end because you couldn't stop either offense. Then punters, take them off the field. They don't matter. Turnovers and points.
Fun times. But yeah, now we're going almost complete opposite direction of that in this game. So it'll be interesting to see. It really is kind of a 1st to 20 probably wins the game.
Yeah, probably. Given that the over-under is 39, I'll go with 1st to 20 probably wins. That's probably the way to go. I don't know. We will see. And also, since we're kind of opening it up here, we're both baseball guys, and I've seen people asking the question, would you rather have the Broncos, or would you rather be a fan of the Braves and have your heart ripped out, 13 runs and, 2 innings? Or would you rather be the Dodgers and, have a good game and then just have it slip away like they did? And for me personally, again, I got to base it off my own personal experiences, but I think I'd rather be the Braves fan than the Dodgers fan in this instance, because I take it back to the Broncos. I know that 2013 43-8 game, the Super Bowl, was bad, but the wind was taken out of the sails so early that it's all I could do is laugh. It's just it's comical. Okay, well, awesome. But I still feel the sting of that 2012 divisional loss to the Ravens. Like that one, that loss will. I wasn't even part of the team, but as a fan, that loss will stick with me for as long as I can probably remember. That I don't think I've ever experienced a loss like that one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, when you're that close to success, and I'm sure Dodgers fans, especially having I'm spacing on their pitcher's
105, 107 wins, something like that, and Clayton Kershaw on the mound.
Yeah, Clayton Kershaw, to have him come in and be the one that blows it for you. I mean, I can't imagine what they're feeling today after such a season, and their team. I can't imagine their ownership after spending all that money to build that team. And I don't know. I agree with you. I'd rather at least know right away that my team's going to lose.
It's the emotional letdown. Like, you can be hyped for that game, but once it's happening, you still have to go through the whole of the game, and I'm not turning it off. I'm not going to turn it off. So just my experience, it's kind of like the Broncos in 2013 versus 2012. And that 2013 one, I think, was more of a national embarrassment. But as a fan, watching the game at the time, that 2012 loss when they gave up a touchdown, 7-yard touchdown to Torrey Smith with 44 seconds left, that one's going to stick with me probably to the end of my days. Unfortunately. But that's why I'm a fanatic. So
I'm with you, man. I am. I was in Seattle, actually, when that game happened. I think I've said this on this podcast before, but I was working. And I didn't get to see most of the game. And I had all my coworkers come and tell me, laughing their heads off. And then having to go home and watch the highlights too on top of that, just to see what happened. It was like double losing the game for me. And so I don't know. It's kind of a crazy time. And there were a lot of people comparing that Braves meltdown to the Broncos for sure. So I'm just glad my team was on the winning side of one of those blowouts.
Our team,
yes. Sorry,
yeah, okay.
I don't want to take too much away from you, but so yeah. And I told you earlier, I'm hoping for a Yankees Cardinals World Series. I know most people would be like, "Oh my gosh, please no!" The two winningest teams in baseball history get to the World Series. Go figure. But no, it'd be fun to see those two historic groups get together, and of course, the Cardinals being huge underdogs in that one. But hey, they've it seems like when they're underdogs, that's when they win.
Yeah.
It's when they're favorites that they don't seem to come through.
Yeah. We'll see, but probably get moving back on the football.
Yes, because we got lots to talk about. This is going to be an interesting opponent coming up, and so we want to make sure we're going to be tweeting about this all the way up to the game, even after the game. So make sure you're following us on Twitter. I'm at Carl Dumler MHH, and of course Nick is at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod, and make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating, as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated, and know that this podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
A phenomenal win for the Denver Broncos on Sunday, beating the Chargers in LA for the second year in a row. Phenomenal. And they also covered. You guys, if you've missed out on any of the fun, there is still plenty of time left for you to get in on the action with MyBookie. Of course, we got the Broncos Titans this week. But how about an in-game wager or some player props? Do you still think the AFC West might be in play with the Chiefs losing and the Raiders winning and the Chargers losing and the Broncos winning? You guys go get great odds on that too. That just scratches the surface though. I mean, we have teamed up with MyBookie this October to give you this great offer. Here it is. Ready? Sign up at mybookie.ag, use promo code OVERTIME, and they will match your first deposit. Again, promo code OVERTIME, and new users, you get your first deposit doubled. MyBookie.ag. You play, you win, you get paid.
All right. Well, the Broncos have the Tennessee Titans coming to town, as we were talking about earlier. And the Titans are kind of a weird team this year.
Yeah.
Like, they got the huge win week 1 against the Browns that surprised everybody. What, like 43-13 or something like that?
Yeah, they absolutely whooped up on them. That said, maybe Cleveland's a little bit of a paper tiger, too.
Yeah, they're definitely showing that they're a little bit overrated compared to the media darling they were during the offseason. But still, I mean, big win. And then they lose 2 in a row. And, I mean, a couple close games, but just things didn't quite break their way. And then they get another road win. This is what's kind of crazy. They're 2-3 on the season, but they're 2-1 on the road.
That's a trend this season, actually. A lot of the road teams are actually winning more than the home teams are.
Do you have any thoughts on why that's happening?
I think it's just, a little bit of random noise in the statistical model. And we're going to we will see the home teams eventually come back around. It's just, every game is its own game. You got to trust the statistics over long term. But, right now, it is what it is. Just kind of a funny thing to mention.
Right. But they are coming off a loss now against the Buffalo Bills, 14-7. And have a losing record, 2-3 on the season. But they're right there in the mix.
Remember we talked about this before the season. I said the Bills would be better than the Browns. I love that Bills defense.
I'm with you. I mean, Buffalo, I think is just the way that the season's going. I think they're actually a top 10 team in the NFL right now.
I mean, I have top 3 defense. They can get after it, man. And I love their coaching staff married to the general managing, the front office. McDermott and Bean, man, those guys are on the same page. That's what it's all about.
Right. And they've done such a great job of understanding the kind of quarterback that they have in Josh Allen.
Yeah.
And like going and getting a guy like John Brown, who's a deep threat, which is perfect for Josh Allen. So again,
Knox has been big, built up the offensive line, but it's the defense, man.
Right.
Their defense can hang. Because their defense is so good, they can hang with anybody.
Right. And so, again, that was a really big game there, 14-7. 2 great defenses going at it. And I want to talk here about the Titans defense because I really do think that they're one of the most underrated units in all of football. I think Benjamin Albright has talked about this quite a bit on Twitter, and people are kind of going, yeah, right. Well, they're actually pretty darn good.
Well coached.
Very well coached. I mean, Mike Vrabel, I met the guy. He is huge. Oh my gosh.
If there was a Coliseum style where all the head coaches, had to battle in supremacy of physical tests or like an American Ninja Warrior, Mike Vrabel's coming out on top. I have zero doubt about that. He is an absolute tank. I remember seeing him at the Combine. Man, what a monster.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Very, very impressive guy. But again, he has his defense cooking. They are 9th in total yards per game, only giving up 332 yards. 6th in points at 15.2. 4th and third down defense, only allowing 31% on third downs. 10th in pass yards allowed. 13th in quarterback rating. 14th in rush yards allowed. And I mean, just another big stat for them is they are tied for 4th with 17 sacks on the season. So again, just an all around very, very good defense. Good against the run. Great against the pass. I'll talk about it here in just a little bit, but they are great at forcing turnovers. Just there's nothing that this defense doesn't do good.
Yeah. I do have a little bit of tidbits here about how you'll have to hopefully attack them. That'll be after the first break, but they are a really good defense, and they're just going to be better next year because they're going to get my boy on defense. And the guy went 1 pick before the Broncos. Don't know if they'd have taken him, but Jeffrey Simmons. Man, that defense is going to be that much better next year. So, I mean, they're a solid team. The offense, though, I mean, it's one of those things where it doesn't matter how much you do around them. If your quarterback is not the guy, and by all intents and purposes, Marcus Mariota does not look like the guy, then you're going to struggle, right? Like, it sucks, but that's the name of the game. Unless you have an elite, stroke of luck level defense, Let's be honest, the Broncos 2015, all those guys being healthy and young and the contract at the same time, there's some luck involved in that. And that's just not where they're at. They're a good team, but not a great team. And because their quarterback is just so tapioca pudding, they're not going to do much.
But it's weird. You look at some of these stats, so I'll go through these real quick. 27th in yards per game, 23rd in points per game at 19.6. 28th in passing yards per game, but Marcus Mariota is 6th in the NFL in quarterback rating at 103.
He's one of the he's Alex Smith to an nth degree. He's going to take what the defense gives you, but his ability to create explosive plays in the pass game is almost negligible. And I know he takes care of the football, that's great, but at some point you need a guy to go out there and play ball.
But here's another stat for you.
Oh.
He has 6 pass plays of 40-plus yards this season.
What are the air yards on those?
not a whole lot. So, I mean, and that was going to be my next point, was that it has helped that he's had some very interesting weapons to work with, that he gets the ball into their hands and lets them go make the play. I mean, last week is a great example. Jonnu Smith has a 57-yard reception. Now, stats-wise, you look at that and you say, wow, that must have been a nice pass. It was a screen pass. So Marcus Mariota did very little to contribute to that 57-yard pass.
They almost need to change the QB rating because of stuff like that. It's not as bad as Patrick Mahomes getting a passing touchdown for a little shovel pass. That peeves me to no end. But It's, I don't know. It doesn't tell the whole story. It's why the EPA and air yards per attempt and indicators like that are often, one stat isn't the end all be all. You got to take them all and kind of look at them in that regard, and then marry them to tape. So, or you could just listen to us talk about it, and you'll be good.
Right. Well, and it's amazing. He has that 103 quarterback rating, but he's one of the bottom quarterbacks when it comes to QBR, the ESPN stat. He has I think it's 37.1 QBR.
We don't know the formula for that, though, so
right, I understand.
Me skeptical.
But I'm just saying, I mean, you see the discrepancy, which is, again, QBR is supposed to be based more on what a quarterback actually brings to the table compared to just raw stats.
Yeah.
And so, again, like you said, there's some anomalies here because he hasn't thrown an interception, but it's not that he's a great quarterback either.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, at this point, it looks like the Bucs got it right. Mariota, he was looking great until he had that injury. So you got to throw that out there. That's a big part of it. But, Winston and obviously marrying the right coaching staff with him, helping him out. The offensive line in Tampa isn't great, but, Chris Godwin is killing it. Mike Evans is stellar. I think they still have O.J. Howard. I don't know why they don't use him, but they have some players on there. But Titans, it doesn't look great. I know they wanted to run this exotic smash mouth, and Derrick Henry is good, but is he great? I don't know. He's not super dynamic because he's so, I want to say, just limited as a player. He's big, he's strong, he's fast. Once he gets in the open field, good luck. But he doesn't run behind his pads like you'd think for a guy, at least, especially in college, this was an issue with him. He's big, he's strong, but he doesn't play like he's big and strong. You put Philip Lindsay's mentality and running eye and determination between the tackles of Derrick Henry's body, and oh my God. But he wants to bounce things outside, and I get you can do that at Alabama, and we see some big runs here and there, but still, it's not great in that regard so far in his NFL career, and he's not a passing weapon either. And I like this weapon set for the Titans overall. I don't really see a dynamic number one, but, Tajay Sharp is solid. Adam Humphries is a solid slot. I really do like A.J. Brown. He's been killing it despite not a lot of receptions. He's one that worries me a bit this weekend. 5th overall pick, Corey Davis, which in hindsight maybe not the best, but also, again, hard to really poo-poo on him when the quarterbacks have had issues like they are. So I don't know. The offense is just, Mariota just does so little for me. So I come back and it's a defensive team. It's kind of like how the Broncos were in 2016 almost, except they have a bust, quote-unquote bust, injured but bust quarterback. But I really love Daquan Jones and Austin Johnson, some meat in there. Jarrell Casey's continually one of the best underrated defensive linemen in the league. They brought in Cameron Wake, who's been okay. Harold Landry's kind of emerging as a solid pass rusher. And the guys, honestly, it's Rashaan Evans. He's playing as one of the better linebackers in football, not getting very much credit because of how great that linebacker class was. But he's been killing it this year. And I really do like their secondary. The depth of the secondary is good. Malcolm Butler's a good player. Logan Ryan, a good player. Adoree Jackson, he's been up and down, but he's solid. And then Kenny Vaccaro, solid. But the crown jewel of this piece, and probably one of the most underrated defensive players in all of football, is Kevin Byard. I know that they just paid him huge money. I think he even might be the highest paid safety in football now. But still, because, I think he was a 3rd or 2nd round pick from Middle Tennessee State. Not much hype there, but he is incredible. I mean, I think he is leading the NFL in interceptions over the 2017 and 2018 season. Dude has an eye for a ball, and he's a solid tackler as well. So Kevin Byard scares me. He is really good.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, this is a team, I don't know, there's just so many weird stats with them.
Yeah.
That it's really hard to nail them down because like right now they are third in the NFL in turnover differential. They are at +6 right now, but they're 2-3. You look at the teams ahead of them, the Packers at 7, the Patriots at 7. I mean, they're two of the better teams in football. And right now, the Titans, they've only turned the ball over once the entire season. That is just, I mean, through 5 games, you think about the Broncos, it's lucky if we go through a half without a turnover. Unfortunately. The Broncos are one of the bottom teams. We're at -4 right now. And so, again, that's going to be a huge thing to look at in this game. And we're going to talk about that here a little bit more as we go throughout this. But the Titans, I mean, it is kind of take care of the football, run the football, trust your defense to hold up and keep these close games and hope that you can win some of them close. I mean, it's not too much different than what the Broncos are trying to do, really. They're just doing it a little bit better in some aspects and a little bit worse in other aspects.
I agree with you. Yeah, they are. Again, I think they're more like the 2016 Broncos in that regard. And didn't even talk about their offensive line, but Taylor Lewan's going to be back. They paid really good money to Roger Saffold to bring him over from the Rams. He's been solid there. But the center, the right guard, and the right tackle have not been great. I know people like to talk about Jack Conklin being a good player at right tackle. He had that good, okay rookie season, but right now he's living on his name more than his play. In my opinion, right. I think he looks like a guard playing tackle.
And really, I mean, so many people, they point to that rookie season because didn't he get All-Pro nod?
Or something like that. He got a good nod, but he's, man.
He got so much help that season.
Yes, he did.
I mean, when you have Taylor Lewan on the other side, it's so much easier that you can trust that guy to hold up because he's one of the top 5 left tackles in football. And really, that pretty much, like I said, you can just guarantee that Conklin's going to get help on most plays. And so it's not quite the offensive line that they were the last couple years, for sure.
Yeah.
They've had their struggles. Part of it's been Lewan out with his suspension. Part of it has been just some players they've had to downgrade a little bit at different places. And so it is a position group that you can take advantage of if you know how to do it. And if you have some players that can do it. I mean, the Bills absolutely destroyed the Titans offensive line last week. I mean, it was, they were living in Mariota's face through most of the game.
Yes,
and they're making a lot of plays in the run game, making negative plays. So it's possible. Like I said, it's a team that relies on explosive plays for the offense to do anything. I mean, Derrick Henry, like you were saying, he looks like Tarzan and plays like Jane. But when he does get in the open field, he can make a big play. You just might have 7 to 8 straight runs where he gets 0 to negative yards. And then all of a sudden, boom, he knocks one off for 50 yards. And then, like I said, they have these big explosive plays for 40 plus yards. And so if you can contain some of those things, this is a team that's definitely beatable.
Yeah. I agree with you. And yeah, this offensive line did not look good against the Bills. But again, we were talking about how good this Bills defense is. So we'll save that for when the Broncos have to go play a 1 o'clock kickoff in Buffalo in week 11, something like that. That'll be man, Bills Mafia will be there. I don't know if we'll see if the Broncos will be there. But anything else you want to talk about before we take a quick break?
No, I think we've covered most of it here.
Alrighty, folks, we're going to take one quick break. Gotta tip a cap to the sponsors. We'll be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell, along with Carl Dumler, and now it's time to do our, coaching box. We're going to actually head up to the box this week, talk about how we would scheme to defeat the Titans. I'm going to take offense this week, the Broncos offense versus the Titans defense. And I guess we're going to do what Vic Fangio hasn't done yet, which is go up to the booth and kind of get that bird's eye view. But a little tougher challenge for me this week with the Broncos offense going up against the Titans defense. Obviously, we kind of talked about them already. It's a solid unit. It's not an incredible unit right now. Their defensive line is only okay. Once they get Jeffrey Simmons, that could totally change this defensive line. But it's really the secondary and the back seven that I'm a pretty big fan of. Logan Ryan's a good player. Dory Jackson got super good speed. Malcolm Butler's a good player. Kenny Vaccaro's solid, and Kevin Byard, obviously one of the best in football. And I like their depth at safety as well. I mean, Amani Hooker and Dane Cruikshank can both come down and match up and be versatile players. So they got a lot of different kind of players in that secondary. So I'm watching out for them there. But I think for the Broncos, it's as much for the Broncos as it is for going against the Titans. I think they need to run the ball more. I know I want to be a passing team. I'd rather do that. I mean, all the analytics point to passing is more likely to get you points in this league. But the Broncos right now, their offensive line has not been playing in a way where you want to put Joe Flacco back there throwing the ball 35 plus times. If you're doing that, that means that you're behind. So I'm hoping that they run the ball early and often, control the pace, play the field position game. I mean, we're going to have to do a little bit of small ball here, but you know what? That's the state of things right now. One thing I do like about this Broncos team versus the Titans is the Titans have been pretty soft over the middle as far as it pertains to their pass defense, whether that be the linebackers or the nickelbacks. You've been able to pick up yards over the middle. So what I'm hoping to do this week is kind of like what we saw with Sutton last week in his big play, although he ended up taking it to the deep left, is that we're going to see Sanders and Sutton a little bit more in the slot to kind of work that soft spot of the Titans defense, and hopefully we'll get Hamilton more involved too. But let's be honest, folk, he's been really good as a run blocker. I'll give him props there, but as far as the dynamic ability as a receiver, ball's not going his way. He hasn't been great there, so I'm looking to get the ball in a little bit more of explosive playmakers' hands, and that leads me to Noah Fant. 1 reception last week, I believe only 1 target. Granted, 23 dropbacks, 24 dropbacks. That's going to be the case sometimes, but if the Titans are weak up the middle in the pass game, this is a game to get the Titans involved. Hopefully more 12 personnel, maybe even some 13 personnel, as we saw the Broncos open up last week against the Chargers. That would be something I'd be looking to do, but I really want to get the middle of the pass game going for the Broncos, and because we have Flacco a little bit more arm talent, he can fit some of those tighter windows there, unlike what we've seen with Keenum. I do want to run the ball, specifically if we get a chance, run the ball to the right. The Titans have been much less efficient. If you run to the right this season, you're more likely to have a better yards per carry average running at the right tackle or bounce it out wide right, and this has a lot to do with Harold Landry. Harold Landry is a kind of a Shade Ray type of pass rusher where he's got good bend, he's got good burst, taking the end of the second round 2 seasons ago, but man, if you run at him, you can get him moving, you can get some movement there. So if you're running the ball, I'm looking to go to the right if I can. They're a little bit more stronger on the other side in that regard, so hopefully going to do that. And then passing wise also, I am nervous about throwing over the middle of the field deep, just because Byard's there, he's going to take the ball away. But an interesting distinction here for the passing game. Teams are only having a 61 passer rating throwing deep right, but they have a 116 passer rating throwing deep to the left. So if you're going to take your shots, throw it deep to the left. You're going to find much more success there. So yeah, that's my thoughts. It's going to be a tough game. Really, I don't want to take too much of a page out of the Titans book, but protect the football, no strip sacks, no interceptions, and make that Titans offense beat you. Because if you go out there and you're making mistakes and giving them a short field position, that's when things can get in trouble for you with a team with the issues the Broncos have on offense so far this season.
Yeah, good plan. I mean, like I said, it is kind of a control the ball, control the position battle, and if you can do that, there's a good chance you're going to come out of this game with a victory. But switching to the other side, now this is where it's their weakness on our strength, and I want to start off with a couple things just to kind of get these out there. The Titans, they really are one of the few teams that is very, very balanced. 141 passing attempts to 139 rushing attempts. They also are a team that they love to spread the ball around. Their leading receiver is A.J. Brown with 250 yards, but they actually have 3 other receiving options that have more catches than him, and Davis, Walker, and Humphreys. So, Mariota, he is very good at spreading the ball around. He will take what the defense gives him. We already talked about that. And I do want to point out, we've already talked about this a little bit. Derrick Henry is a very, very different runner than Leonard Fournette. Fournette, when we did our preview episode, we talked about it. He's pretty easy to track because everything is between the tackles. There's been 5 runs outside the tackles this year for him. He's just an inside, I'm going to go and run your people over, that kind of runner. Henry, on the other hand, most of his big runs have been to the outside. He really hasn't done much to the inside. He doesn't have the best vision by any point. I mean, he has a lot of negative runs. And so the Titans, what they kind of do is they try to lull you to sleep with a lot of inside runs, and then boom, they pop one to the outside. And I will say, just like with the Broncos, they do rely on their tight ends and wide receivers to do a lot of run blocking. And they are pretty darn solid actually as run blockers. And so the Broncos will have to be very careful to watch that and keep an eye on it. But, and then like we said, Mariota, he's not a great quarterback, but he is a smart quarterback. He is one that will protect the football, hasn't thrown an interception this year. And so you got to kind of try to confuse him a little bit. You got to work things differently throughout the game. You got to mix up coverages because they do have a lot of zone beater type players. I mean, they have some tight ends that can go over the middle, that can get into those soft spots. They have Dion Lewis, who's a very good receiving running back out of the backfield that can go make some plays against them. I mean, they run a ton of screen plays. And so while this is a game where I do think the Broncos should blitz some, I think they have to be very, very careful when they do. Because like I said, the Titans are trying to catch you in one of those blitzes. That's how they got that 57-yard play against the Bills last week. It's why they've had a lot of their big plays so far this season is catching teams when they get those one-on-one matchups and their guy going out there and winning the battle. And so again, careful with some of the zone plays, careful with some of the blitzes, but this really is a game where you just have to stay very disciplined because they will try to really run a lot of the same plays over and over again and then boom, try to hit you with something that is completely counter to what they've done. And so you just have to play a very, very smart game. They are susceptible, like we've already talked about. Center, right guard are not great. If you are going to blitz, I would blitz up the middle. This is Alexander Johnson. This is Todd Davis. This is their opportunity to get in there and make some plays up the middle. And this is another game that I think that you could really see Mike Purcell have a very, very good game because I think he's going to have some easier matchups. I think he can really blow up some run plays in the backfield. I think this is going to be a very good opportunity for our interior defensive line. Now, it's going to be interesting how they handle the outside rushers because Taylor Lewan, like we've already said, very good tackle. Good chance he's going to win his matchups. If Malik Reed can win even a third of his matchups against Taylor Lewan, I'm going to be very, very impressed. Because they are going to probably just leave Taylor Lewan on an island and say, we're going to take on Von Miller. We're going to double team him. And so again, other guys then have to realize that they're going to have to go make some plays. They're going to have some one-on-one opportunities. And again, with our secondary, with where it's at, I do think the Broncos are going to play a lot more zone just because again, the Titans like to run a lot, but just understand that they're going to have guys that are pretty smart at finding the holes. Just keep things there in front of you. Don't give up the big plays. Look for a few plays here and there to try to make the big play. But this is a team that doesn't turn the football over. So they're very disciplined in that way. So again, you just have to make them have to march the entire field because they haven't shown that they can do that very much this year. And if you can do that, I think there's a really good chance the Broncos can win this game.
All right. There you go. Man, I just really hope that the defense really comes out and has a heyday. You know, they were doing pretty well against the Chargers, but I'm hoping for a complete game. You know, like coming back to Denver, right in that win, it would be amazing to see the defense just kind of come out. You know, we're starting to see, Purcell there, the nose tackle. Shelby Harris at a better spot because he obviously wasn't a nose. I don't know why that took so long. Granted, trying to get your best guys out there, but don't fit a square peg in a round hole, right? And A.J. Johnson should help there. I guess one thing I do want to bring up that you didn't bring up too much here is you brought it a little bit, but the tight ends itself concerned me. You know, like Jono Smith and Walker, they a little bit concerning. You know, last week going against Virgil Green, that's one thing. But this is a different beast. I know Walker's been limited, but that's my biggest concern, honestly.
Yeah, and that is one thing to point out. Delaney Walker has been hurt. He was back at practice today, so I'm guessing he's going to play. I don't think there's any reason why he's not going to play. But he has been banged up the last 2 weeks. He's only had 2 catches for 14 yards. But that doesn't mean that they're still not trying to find him. There was a couple plays last week that he made the catch, but it was called back as a penalty. So some of those stats are a little bit misleading when it comes to what he's bringing to the field. But Jonnu Smith, he's the one I really think you got to watch out for because he is their big play tight end. I mean, he only had the 1 catch for 57 yards last week, but he did have the 1 catch. And so he's explosive. I think he ran like a 4.62 40.
Yeah, he was a good athlete. I remember him and Gerald Everett were 2 that I really wanted the Broncos to target in that draft in rounds 3 to 4, and I think both of them went earlier than we thought. I don't know if you saw Gerald Everett had a huge game last week too. So, yeah, they're both really good athletes. Not the best blockers, right, but they're kind of that hybrid tight end, wide receiver, H-back that if they get the ball in space, especially against a linebacker, look out.
Yeah. No, this is definitely a tougher matchup for those guys. We will see what Alexander Johnson, if last week was more of a fluke and just a better matchup, or if he can actually handle these kind of matchups and see what they can do. I just, like I said, because of the limitations with Mariota, I'm not as worried, more because of him than because of the weapons that they have. Because I mean, we've already said it. He limits what they can do on offense. And he's not willing a lot of times to challenge the middle of the field as much, just because he doesn't want to turn the football over. And the last thing I will say is some of his weapons have not helped out because they've had a lot of drops. I mean, that was a big issue that they had last week where there was about 3 or 4 first downs that were dropped. And so they're not the best hands in the world, but I mean, if they have a clean game, I think they can move the football a little bit. So, I mean, like I said, they have athletes. I don't know if they have the best pass catchers.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right, so game predictions now. The Broncos are 2.5 favorites, which means on a neutral site, Broncos would be about a 0.5 to 1 point dog. But, got the mile high advantage, so hopefully that'll come into play this week. We haven't seen that so much this season, but historically we do. Over under, like we previously said, 39. So I guess, Carl, where are you at on the over under? Because we'll obviously get to the spread once we get to the game prediction.
I'm going to go over on this one. It is the lowest over under of any game this week, which makes sense. You got 2 defenses that are in the top 10 against 2 offenses that are probably in the bottom 10. So it makes sense. I just think this is going to be like one of those like 24-20 kind of games. I feel like there's going to be a couple explosive plays because both teams, that's what they kind of rely on. And I think there's enough there that both teams could have one or 2 of those plays. And then, I mean, unfortunately for the Broncos, because the Titans turn over the ball, can get turnovers. I think they could make some points that way. I don't know. It just, and I feel like the Titans are one of those teams where they also could have one of those really bad weeks where they have like 3 turnovers because they haven't had any. And maybe this is that week. I don't know. It's kind of a weird feeling game right now.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see what happens there. So I guess I'll turn it over to you now. The Broncos win if.
The Broncos win if they only give up 2 sacks in this game.
Wow. Okay. I'm going to go with the Broncos win if they... Ooh, man, I was going to go with the turnover battle, but I feel like that's such a cop-out. I'll go with the Broncos win if they have a better average starting field position. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I'll go with the under when it comes to the over-under. And I think that the team that just averages better starting field position, so special teams is going to be big, forcing 3 and outs, not getting 3 and outs, that little chess game inside the game itself is going to be big. So I'm going to say the average starting field position winner is the one who takes out the W this week. So the Broncos lose if.
I mean, I guess an easy one to say would be Derrick Henry rushes for over 100 yards.
That's a good one. I'll go the Broncos lose if they have less than 2 plays of 20 or more yards. I think that the Titans are disciplined, but as we've seen, the Broncos need some explosive plays to occur. And I think, we see Sutton do it. We see a little bit more with Lindsey, but those explosive plays, again, comes back to field position. it's really hard to nickel and dime down the field. Brady can do it. Great all-time greats can do it, but it's really hard to be that consistent and do that without somebody messing up. So I'm going to go with some explosive plays as being key. So the MVP if the Broncos win is?
I'm going to go with Ronald Leary.
Wow. Okay.
And because he's going to have that matchup with Jarrell Casey. Now, sometimes, I guess it's going to be a Reisner-Leary combination because they're going to have to go against that guy. And, he still doesn't get the recognition that he deserves for what he brings to the field. And I think if they can contain him, if they can keep him from making a lot of big plays, if they can even win that battle, I think the Broncos really stand a great chance of winning this game. Who do you have? I like
that one. For me, I'm going to go with Noah Fant. Not used much, but like I said, the Titans can be, if there's anywhere this defense is soft, it's over the middle. And with Noah Fant coming off a 1-target, 1-reception game last week, I think that he's going to be due for a big game. I almost went Sanders. I think they're going to try to work him into the slot more this game due to that. But I'm going to go with Noah Fant. The young guy hopefully steps up and takes the game, so I'm going to go with him. And the GOAT, if they lose, I'm going to go with... Ooh, man, what's a good one here? As much as it sucks, I'm going to go with Yadam. I feel like, the Titans' pass game hasn't been great, but they do have some good weapons they've invested pretty early in. Corey Davis is one. We've obviously seen A.J. Brown make some plays, so I'm going to go with Yadam. Hopefully he turns it around, but it's really kind of starting to snowball on him. And if he just trusted his technique, I think he'd be okay, but he's getting grab happy, so I'm a little bit worried there. And the Broncos, like we said, penalty yards, I think they had 12 penalties for 122 yards. Not going to win many games that way, so Yadam will be the GOAT if they lose, I think.
So I'm going to go with the MVP from last week, Alexander Johnson. You already said it. This is going to be a game that tests him. If he can show well, then the good chance he's going to hold down that position the rest of the year. But this is one of those games where you could see the Titans go, all right, young man, you had a great game last week. Good job. There's a lot of players that have had one good game. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. And so Jonnu Smith, Delaney Walker, I could see them trying to get him in man coverage and see if he can hold up. And against those guys, that's right. And he's good coming downhill. Is he good running down the field 15, 20 yards? We didn't get to see that last week a whole lot.
Yeah. All right. Unsung hero if the Broncos win.
I'm going to go Shelby Harris in this one. I think he's finally in that position that he belongs. And he showed signs last week that, again, just moving to that position, he showed much better. I think this is one of those weeks that he could really explode onto the scene and become that player like we saw in the Pittsburgh game where he's just blowing up plays in the backfield, getting in the quarterback's face. Shelby Harris, I think, is that guy that could really just everybody be talking about him this time next week.
I don't mind it. I'm going to go with Deshaun Hamilton. I've been dipped hard on him in this podcast, but his run blocking has been solid, especially for a wide receiver 3. I don't think he is a wide receiver 2 in this league, but as a 3, I'm okay with it. And I think that, again, considering how soft the Titans have been over the middle, that's a guy that you might want to manufacture some targets for. So along with the blocking at the second level outside, creating some big plays, Titans have been giving some big plays up to the right outside in the run game. So I'm going to go with Deshaun Hamilton as an unsung hero in this one. Hopefully get a few more targets and can show out in that regard. Granted, when you throw the ball 23 times or drop back 23 times and you're pressured on 60% of the rates, there's only one ball that can go around. It's kind of seen it with the Browns right now. They have weapons galore, but they can't pass block, so they can't really run the offense. So I think Hamilton is the guy in that regard. Even if his targets are limited, hopefully he'll get a chance to shine and be utilized in the run blocking game outside where he's been solid this year. So finally, score prediction, Carl. I'll tip my cap to you.
All right. Well, I already said that I was going to take the over, so I better, I guess, put my points at the over. But I'm going to go actually 24-17 Broncos win this game. I think their home field, I think they got the momentum where last week the Titans really got beat up against that great Bills defense. And I just think that this is one of those games that's going to swing for the Broncos. I think they are going to get maybe 1 or 2 turnovers, force that first interception for Mariota. And I mean, he's one of those guys. I think his mental makeup right now, just with injuries and everything else, all it's going to take is that one spark, and I think things could fall apart for him. And so I think this is one of those games. Broncos get at least that one big turnover and score enough just to make sure that they get the victory. 24-17. You?
I'm going to go the Broncos winning 20-10. That keeps them under the under, which I think will happen. But that 20-point mark, they're finally starting to hit it pretty consistently. Let's see if we can get it 3 weeks in a row in that regard. And I don't really believe in this Titans offense, especially on the road. I think Broncos country is going to show up in Mile High. Team's going to be excited to come home after a win, looking to feed off that energy. These people want to cheer for the Broncos. Like sometimes when there's losing going on, the players start to get a little bit chafed at the media and the fans. Folks, we don't want the Broncos to be bad. Either way, speaking media/fans, we don't want the Broncos to be bad. We want to cheer for you. So I think that that's going to kind of empower them at Empower Field. That was an accident. And lead them on to victory. So 20-10 Broncos.
I like it. I'll take it.
I do want to throw out, though, Carl, I've only gotten 1 game right on the season. I've been right on the spread, I think, 2 times.
Yeah.
But the last week I picked the Chargers. And, so not great. I think the only one I've gotten correct was the Packers game. So, that's the nature of this. You never know. Even if you put all this time and work into it and know a lot of things, when the game is played, toss it out the window. Crazy things happen. That's what makes this game so great. So, all right, we're going to take one more quick break, folks. For those of you who do not care about the NFL draft or the upcoming offseason, we probably bid you adieu. But for those of you psychopaths like myself, like Carl, like Eric, loving the NFL draft, we're going to be talking about Dane Brugler's most recent big board, talking about his top 20 prospects and just kind of how they fit with the Broncos. So don't go anywhere if you're a draft fan. We'll be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell along with Carl Dumler. And Carl, guess what?
What?
It's draft season, baby. It's always draft season. But we're going to be moving on to draft season here. And I guess I got to ask, I think I'd prefer to work this through 20 up to 1. I just think it's a little bit more of a theatric release of these kind of players. Are you with me on that? Does that sound good?
Work up to 1?
Yes, so 20-1.
Okay, I'll take it.
Alrighty, so kicking off here, Dane Brugler released his top 60 big board. If you guys want to see it, it's on The Athletic. Love the guy, great analyst, very well connected in this as well. Probably one of my favorites out there. So we're going to start here looking at this big board, and we're going to sculpt it to the Denver Broncos point of view. And the first guy here is at number 21, DeAndre Swift, running back from Georgia. 5'9", 215 pounds, 447 pounds, and he has written here, Swift entered the season as running back 1, and thus far, he hasn't done anything to change that. Despite defenses knowing that Georgia wants to establish the run, he's averaging nearly 8 yards a carry and showing off his blend of elusiveness and tough running. Swift also is averaging 12.5 yards per catch. So I love Swift, Carl. He's my running back 1, followed closely by Jonathan Taylor at Wisconsin. But I am not taking a running back in the first round almost ever in general, but especially with the Broncos having Phillip Lindsay and Royce Freeman.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty easy one. The position's already filled. Really, if anything, the Broncos are looking for a new running back 3 next year, and you don't use a first-round pick on a running back 3. And so, I mean, as much as I love Swift and what he brings, and I do think he's going to be a great fit in today's NFL, it's definitely not a pick for the Broncos. And so somebody's going to be happy they get him. It's just not going to be the Broncos.
Yep, I agree. Moving on now, number 19, Javon Kinlaw, interior defensive lineman from South Carolina, 6'5", 308 pounds, and Brugler says here, still young in football years. Kinlaw is explosive off the ball with length and contact balance to force his way through the line of scrimmage. Kinlaw, who leads the Gamecocks with 4 sacks, is still discovering just how good he can be. And Kinlaw, I believe, was actually homeless for a little bit growing up and was pretty new to football. I think it's maybe his 5th year playing football. The tools are tantalizing. He's still a bit raw, but I don't know if you watched the South Carolina versus Alabama game. He made some Alabama offensive linemen look rather foolish. So, everybody's throwing out the raw, athletic, long interior pass rusher being Chris Jones-like, but I think there is some Chris Jones ability in there with Kinlaw, but it's more potential right now than it is realized ability.
Right. If the Broncos get to the late teens, early 20s, he's definitely a guy that I could see them taking a look at, just because, one, they could be losing all 3 defensive linemen after this season in Gotsis, Harris, and Wolf. And so, it's going to be a position of need. And so Kinlaw for sure should get a look. If he's there in the second, I'm running to the podium. Again, just a very, very good athlete that I would love to see the Broncos get a hold of and see what they can do in this defense, because right now they don't have a guy quite like him that offers all that he does, or offers the high upside, high ceiling. And really in a Fangio defense, you need that interior guy that can get that pressure, and he would be perfect for that.
Yeah, he's more of a 3-4-5 as well, where it looks like even though Mike Purcell played solid, you probably want a little bit more juice from that 0/1 technique. So it comes down to more what happens with Gotsis and Wolf, as well as how Jones and Walker progress, because they're not 0/1s, and Harris as well, as we've seen. So really only one true 0/1 technique on this roster right now. Next guy, one that I like a lot. I've seen a mock draft for the Broncos taking him as early as 5 overall. I wouldn't take him that high, but good player, first-round talent. Christian Fulton, cornerback from LSU, 6 foot, 195 pounds. And Brugler says, I still have some questions about Fulton's ball tracking skills downfield, but his athletic twitch and physical nature allow him to stay attached to receivers, making them uncomfortable. With true freshman Derek Stingley looking like the real deal. P.S. Have you seen this kid, Derek Stingley?
Yes. I've watched a little bit of LSU.
God.
They have an absolute amazing defense. They're looking like a top 5 team in football right now. So,
yeah.
And part of it is because of the secondary and all that they offer. Christian Fulton, I remember you bringing this guy to my attention last year, because everybody was talking about his playing partner, but really Fulton was probably the better cornerback on the field last year.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any probably. He was the better cornerback on the field last year. Yeah. And right now it's looking like he's going to go higher than what his playing partner went. And so it looks like the real deal has pretty much everything that you're wanting. And again, that physical nature, that's something that is big in the Fangio system. And so I could definitely see him as a fit for the Broncos. Like you said, I'm not taking him top 5. There's some other cornerbacks that I like better than him, but I still wouldn't be disappointed if this is where the Broncos go.
Yeah, I think he's in that 9 to 18 range if I was picking. So I do have a little bit of questions with his physicality in tackling, but that's something. It's not like I did with Greedy Williams last year. It's a little bit better than that. So we'll see. Next, coming up, 17, Derek Brown, defensive lineman from Auburn, 6'4", 325 pounds, and projected 5'0", 240, which is pretty incredible for that size. When scouting 300-pound defensive linemen, some show explosiveness in their lower body, while others explode with their upper body. The rare ones do both, which is why I have Brown as the number 1 interior defensive line prospect at this point in the process. I haven't gotten a chance to get back to see him versus Florida. Florida's offensive line is young, not very good yet, but apparently he dominated there, was all over the field, so I'm excited to see that. Yeah, okay, I was watching the Hawks rip my heart out during that, unfortunately. But, he is a really interesting one, and I wouldn't, if the Broncos are picking 8 to 14, he's one I could definitely get behind because of the size, the length, the power that he has, as well as the pass rushing juice. He's a 3-down lineman. He could probably play 5 technique down to 0 technique, and that versatility, that power, that size is something the Broncos don't have. I think he's probably the closest thing in this class that we'll have to my boy Jeffrey Simmons.
Yeah, he's not quite, obviously, Jeffrey Simmons. I don't think he has the movement ability of a Jeffrey Simmons, but not many do. So I can't fault him too much for that. But just raw power, ability to drive people back, ability to win with some first step quickness. And I think he's just beginning to scratch the surface on some things. And like you said, his versatility to play all over the defensive line, wherever you need him, this is the guy that can step in. Like you said, if they're in the 8 to 16 area, I've seen him mock to the Broncos in the top 5. I would not take him there. I think there's other players that can make a bigger impact, that have a much higher ceiling. But to add to this defensive line a player like that would be huge for moving forward for the Broncos.
Yep, and we touched on 2 of my 3 favorite defensive linemen here. The other one to look for, who I think maybe the Broncos could nab in the second round, is Marvin Wilson from Florida State, who is a big boy. Needless to say, it's actually a pretty solid nose tackle class coming up here, folks. So Purcell's going to really have to show something if he's going to be the guy going forward. But either way, I think Fangio might be able to find his Eddie Goldman in this class. Moving forward, number 16, Isaiah Simmons, linebacker/safety from Clemson, 6'3", 228, 4.55 40 speed. Brugler says Simmons a better safety or linebacker. Maybe he's more of just a nickel. Regardless, smart defensive coordinators will find a role with his versatile skill set. With this blend of length, athleticism, and toughness, Simmons is an ideal modern-day defender. So I really like Simmons. Maybe I'm overthinking it too much, but the positionlessness of his game right now does concern me a bit. You know, like you're seeing Fangio wanting that nickel guy to be a bit more of that good hitting cornerback. And while Simmons, I think, could be that, you're probably drafting him to be a linebacker. And I just don't know how he is going to do in run fits. The athleticism is incredible, and the upside is big, and I wouldn't have any problem taking him in the top 10, to be completely honest, because of that upside. There's added risk to taking somebody that doesn't have a defined position in the NFL, in my opinion, especially on defense. So it comes down to how he fits with Fangio, but stopping the run and tackling is non-negotiable. The athleticism and the coverage skills are gigantic, but there's still just that added risk for me because he's not super defined in his position.
Right. It's hard for me when, especially the Broncos just had a smaller linebacker in Corey Nelson. And, I mean, his name quickly is becoming a cuss word on this podcast because of how bad Isaiah Simmons is in a whole new level compared to Corey Nelson. But like you said, when we're talking about the run game, the run fit, how does he help in that game? How does he hinder that game? For a possibly top 10 pick for the Broncos, are you really wanting to use that on a guy that's more of a hybrid player? Or are you wanting that true 3-down linebacker, which I don't think that this draft really has right now, unless you really, I guess Dylan Moses is one, but how healthy is he going to be?
This isn't a first-round linebacker class.
Right. And so this might be where you're looking in those mid-rounds to find that guy that can play a little bit more of that true 3-down linebacker position that maybe doesn't offer as much high upside in the coverage, but offers more of a well-balanced player. So I like Simmons, and I wouldn't mind the pick. I just would be interested to see, 1, what kind of defensive line he has in front of him, and 2, who do they plug next to him?
Yeah. Good point. He would be a really nice yin and yang to A.J. Johnson. Won't lie. But moving forward, because obviously we still got some guys to get to here. Trevon Diggs, cornerback from Alabama, 6'2", 202. Aside from Justin Herbert, Diggs is the highest-rated senior prospect on the draft board. While he still needs to tweak some of his technical aspects of his position, Diggs is a freakish athlete with a ceiling to be an NFL team's top corner. I like Diggs. I haven't done as much work on the Alabama secondary yet. You know, there's been kind of a negative stigma with some of these Alabama defensive backs coming in because of the coaching they've received, how much better they're actually going to get. Diggs is a little bit different there, but I think the Alabama stigma for DBs needs to die. With Minkah Fitzpatrick and Marlon Humphrey really killing it in this league. Humphrey's a top 5 cornerback this year, in my opinion. Diggs, if he can show that talent there and show some zone ability, I'm more than interested. I would put Fulton above him, but I like a lot what Trevon Diggs brings to the table.
Yeah, I worry less just because of the Broncos coaching staff.
Yeah.
That I think that they're such good coaches and teachers that there isn't like an actual drop-off. You see, that was one of the big concerns for Alabama secondary players is they're getting some of the best coaching in the country. in Alabama, and then they come to another team and they take a step back actually because they're not getting as good a coaching. But I feel like the Broncos actually have a very good secondary coach and defensive coordinator, obviously coach, all of them working with him. So I don't worry about it as much, but I'm with you. It would be a good, not great pick for me. And again, it all depends where the Broncos are slotted when it comes to the draft. If we're talking top 5, then yeah, I'm actually probably pretty upset if we take Diggs. If we're round 15 to 20, I'm feeling a little bit better about that pick and very much understand it.
Yeah. All right. Moving forward here, 14, Laviska Shenault, wide receiver, Colorado, 6'2", 224, 455. Shenault was my number 1 wide receiver in the preseason, but there is very little separating him from all these talented wideouts, and his injuries could be the difference maker from him being the first wideout drafted to the 4th. Regardless, Shenault has all the talent to be a top 15 pick. I really like Shenault, but Dane hits it out of the park here. Those injuries scare the piss out of me, and with Sutton emerging, honestly, I'm feeling more using the draft capital day 2 on a wide receiver. But, if Shenault, let's say Shenault slips to 25 and the Broncos are picking, let's say, 41, wherever that puts them, I'm moving to go get him. It obviously depends on how his medicals come back, but I think he's a guy who could slip a bit, and in that case, I am targeting the talent. He's a lottery ticket, there's risk there, but, sometimes you got to take a shot.
Yeah, he's for sure absolutely talented, and like he says, top 15 talent when he's healthy. But there's also something to say of if players are injured in college, do you really expect them to stay healthy in the NFL? It's usually if they're injured in college, they're injured in the NFL. You don't see a lot of the opposite direction of that. And so you definitely worry about that. Some of that I do think is just the workload that Colorado gives him. It's just off the charts. They don't have any other playmakers, really. I mean, I'm sorry, Colorado fans that are listening. They're a good, not great team at times. And with Shenault, they're not a very good team. Or without him, they're not a very good team. And so, he's just such a playmaker in the college game, and would love to see him on the Broncos. But I think they're not going to be in the right range for him. Like you said, there's other wide receivers that I like more right now, partly because they're healthy, partly because I think they bring a skill set that's a little bit different. Shenault's got a different skill set, but he doesn't have that absolute explosive speed that you see like from a guy that we're going to talk about here in just a second too.
Yep, but first, Grant Delpit, number 13 here, safety from LSU, 6'2", 206, 4.56 40. He looks a little faster than that. With his anticipation and closing speed from the safety position, Delpit has Pro Bowl potential in the NFL, but if he wants to reach that level and be a top 10 player, he must improve his consistency as a tackler downhill and in the secondary. And folks, I know a lot of people love Delpit. It'd be fun to have a great safety. That tackling, which was on display against Texas, I think he had like 3 missed tackles in that game. It scares me. I know that we want to have a fun dynamic safety. It's great to have players at those positions like, linebacker and safety are 2 that stick out to me, that it's fun to have dominant players there, but the positional value is not as much as, edge rusher or cornerback. But I have a hard time getting past that tackling for this defense. Maybe it's Ghost of Will Park sticking in my head there, but I don't know. I wouldn't love taking Grant Delpit in the top 10.
Yeah, like he has him here, this ranked 13th, that 12 to 19 range, I would be pretty happy about Delpit. Yeah. Top 10, there's definitely a lot of other players that I have ahead of him on my big board. Yep.
Moving forward now, a guy that I really love as a fit for the Broncos, Henry Ruggs III at 12 overall, wide receiver, Alabama, 5'11", 192, and 4.32 projected 40 speed. Some people think he's going to run a sub 4.3 40. Speed kills. Ruggs might be the fastest player in college football. Folks, it's Anthony Schwartz at Auburn, but I didn't tell you that. He is averaging a touchdown every 3.6 receptions and has made some plays on special teams coverage as well. Wouldn't be a shock at all if he was wide receiver 1 on some teams' board because of the impact of his potential. I love Ruggs. I won't lie. I think I'm probably trending more towards not going wide receiver round 1, but it depends on how the board falls. And if the Broncos are picking 12 and Ruggs is the best player on their board, I love it. Speed is a huge part of this Shanahan offense, and by extension, the Scangarello offense and life post Sanders, there's not much speed at the wide receiver core. So getting a guy like Ruggs, I mean, even if he's only getting 4 targets a game, the spacing that he's going to create for everyone else and the gadget plays that you can use for him are really going to create for, everybody. So I would rather go other directions if Broncos have a top 10 pick. But if they end up with Ruggs, I'm going to complain very little and be very excited about using this team in Madden.
So here's the thing about Ruggs that I think gets overlooked so much because everybody just pays attention to the speed. He is a pretty good route runner. Not great. He's not Jerry Jeudy.
He needs to learn to throttle down.
Yeah. But the other big thing is he is actually a receiver. He's not just a speedster. He's not just a track star playing football. He is actually a receiver. He has good, not great hands. And he has an ability when he goes over the middle that he's willing to take some big hits, bounce off guys. He knows how to, once the ball gets in his hand, it's not just that he's going deep. It's that he can take a 5-yard pass and take it for a touchdown. He knows angles.
And he's really good in contested.
Right. There's just so much about his game. John Ross was one of those guys. I liked his game in college, but you could tell this guy without his speed was not very much. Henry Ruggs, even without his speed, is still a very good receiver. So, that's why I like this guy being, even if the Broncos take him in the top 10, I'm going to very much understand that because he is just such a dynamic player and beyond that, just an all around great receiver that you can depend on beyond just going deep.
Yep. Good job. I like it a lot. Ruggs is my wide receiver too for the Broncos. And I really like this next wide receiver a lot. I just don't think he's a fit with the emergence of Cortland Sutton. And that is CD Lamb from Oklahoma. 6'1", 192, 4.48 40 speed, which, man, that's a surprisingly fast guy. I don't think he's going to run that fast, but we'll see. The Oklahoma juggernaut offense continues to roll, and Lamb is a key cog of that machine. He has above average ball skills and football intelligence, and his route running continues to mature every time he takes the field. On the season, Lamb is averaging an astounding 25.9 yards per catch. Prospect over the past few years that mimics DeAndre Hopkins. It's him. But I also believe that he is an X receiver. That's where he would be best utilized, and because of that, I think that he is not a great fit because Sutton is emerging as a dynamic X receiver for this team. Alrighty, folks, we're going to take one quick break. Gotta tip a cap to the sponsors. We'll be right back.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
So this is one of those players you and I are going to disagree on a little bit.
Okay.
I think CD Lamb has a little bit more juice than you think. I think he's gotten faster this year. I think he's stronger this year. They're using him on special teams even as a returner just to get the ball in his hands because teams are trying to shut him down and still can't even shut him down as a receiver. And I think even if he is more of an X than he is anything else, even having this guy on the field with Sutton, I still think you can do a lot of things. I still think the offense can run a lot of different plays that otherwise they couldn't. The Oklahoma, again, like I said, they're not only trying to get the ball in his hands on special teams, they're running with him on jet sweep plays, which is something that you've talked about on this podcast. It's something that you want to see with the Broncos. He has an ability in the open field just to make people miss. There's just so much that I love about this guy's game. And you said it last year when his playing partner, Hollywood Brown, was going that CeeDee Lamb is a better receiver. And I absolutely completely agree with that. And Hollywood Brown's tearing up the NFL. I think CeeDee Lamb, it will be even more special.
Yeah, I just think it's one of those things where he's a great player. You don't turn your nose up at great players. But let's say that you have the chance at Jeudy, Ruggs, or Lamb. I think that both those guys fit better what you need as a complementary skill set than Lamb.
I guess I can get behind that thought. I just would probably have Lamb a little bit higher on my big board than you probably do. But I love receivers, so.
Yeah. All right, moving forward, top 10 now. Probably should kick up the pace a little bit. Jordan Love, quarterback, Utah State. Mahomes-like was mentioned when discussing him. Although his decision-making requires maturing, Love is a loose passer with arm talent and movements that help him create magic as a ball handler. I like the upside with Love. I honestly think he's going to be going back to school. Or maybe even a grad transfer. I want one of these low-level tier school quarterbacks to transfer to a Power 5 and get some real talent around them just to kind of see where they're at, and he'd be one. But I don't think the Broncos are going to be taking Love top 10. Can we just move on?
Yep.
Okay. Next up, AJ Epinesa, listed as edge for Iowa. 6'5", 285 pounds, 4.75 40. The stat sheets are always misleading, but it is surprising to see Epinesa with only 1 tackle for loss and 1 sack through 4 games. Folks, he's raised that now since this was written. He's seen more attention from offenses, but the main reason for his unimpressive production, but Epinesa needs to adjust and turn up his impact. He had a good game against Michigan last week, despite the offense not showing up. I like Epinesa a lot. 6'5", 285 does feel like a potential fit for this defense. You know, we saw Justin Smith under Vic Fangio playing about the same size, and Epinesa has such powerful hands. He's a really good gap controller. I do wonder if he is still a little bit light than what Fangio wants, because Epinesa does have a size similar to that of Adam Gotz's.
Yeah, I mean, I would like the pick.
Yeah.
I think, like I said, people are a little more underwhelmed with him this year, but I mean, you can't just look at this year. And like I said, there's so much the teams are doing just to stop this guy and say anybody else beat us. And so, I mean, you got to factor that in for sure. But I don't know. Do you think he has room to grow, like to add weight to his body and not lose his explosiveness?
I think he could put on another 5 to 10. Probably not much more, though.
Right. That's a little bit of my worry. He's not one of those guys that looks like he can add too much. So is he more of that hybrid player, or kind of like we talked about with Isaiah Simmons? Is he kind of that hybrid that you're just a little bit worried about where you're going to fully fit him on the team?
Yeah, honestly, that's one of them. So, I love Epinesa, no doubt, but there's just a little bit of projection there, so it adds a little bit of risk. Jerry Jeudy coming in at 8, wide receiver from Alabama, and 6'1", 195, 4.5 40, which pretty surprising speed there. He plays much faster than that on tape. There isn't a better break and balance athlete in college football than Jeudy, which allows him to win with his releases, out of his breaks, or after the catch as a ball carrier. In a loaded class, I don't believe he is the consensus top receiver, but he will be a dynamic weapon in the NFL. So I like Jeudy a lot. If the Broncos are picking 8 and he's their BPA, I'd have no issue with it. I think he can play Z or slot at a very high level. And the fact that he has yak ability on top of quick separation ability, I think that's something this team desperately needs in a post-Sanders landscape.
Yeah, I mean, he's my number 1 receiver, and for many different reasons. But again, that route running, he's one of those guys that I've had a lot of people tell me that the Broncos should go the veteran way after Sanders leaves, just because you don't want to have to worry about breaking in that rookie. Jerry Jeudy is about as NFL ready as any wide receiver I've seen. I mean, the route running's great. He's going to be able to get himself open. He's quick. He's got good hands. He's got a good ability in the open field. There's just so much to like about his game. And like I said, he's not like Sutton. And so he's one of those guys that you could see having that 10 to 12 targets a game because he's getting open so quick against defenses. You can move him around. He can play all wide receiver positions. The only thing I worry about a little bit, he is on the skinny side. I mean, he does look pretty tiny at times. But beyond that, I mean, if that's my only complaint, that's a pretty good receiver right there.
Absolutely. All right, moving forward now, number 7, Alex Leatherwood, offensive tackle from Alabama. Played right guard last year, played left tackle this year, could play right tackle. 6'5", 320, 530. It is tough for an Alabama left tackle to be underrated, but that is how it feels with Leatherwood right now. I ranked him as my number 16 player overall in August, mainly because he wasn't yet a proven college tackle. However, Leatherwood has played as expected so far in 2019, dominant. So, Leatherwood, the first of 3 offensive tackles in the top 7 for Dane Brugler. I'll admit I haven't done as much work on Leatherwood yet, haven't done as much work on the SEC. I've done work on actually LSU and Georgia, but not so much work on Alabama besides the wide receivers. But Leatherwood, if Dane's saying this top 7, you have my attention.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, Bronco fans should really be checking out this offensive tackle class, because there's a good chance, even if like Bowles does improve, you still have to worry about, can he consistently improve? And then also you have to worry on the other side with Juwan James. I mean, obviously we've seen with the injury, he's also on a 2-year contract with a 2-year option. And so is he even going to be in the Broncos' future beyond next year? I mean, so there's a lot of reasons to be looking at this offensive tackle class. And Alex Leatherwood, great run blocker, great guy that can move a lot of people. I still need to see more just because this is his first time really playing at that left tackle spot. So I want to see just how he does throughout the entire year, especially as the competition amps up here coming into SEC play. But start off the season, guys, definitely looking good.
Alrighty, moving forward here. Justin Herbert, number 6, quarterback Oregon, 6'6", 240, 468 40. After completing just 59.4% of his passes last year, Herbert has a 74.4% completion in 2019 with a 14-0 touchdown interception ratio. I think his touchdown streak just ended this past week. Conservative play calling has helped boost his stats, no question, but Herbert has clearly taken a positive step with his decision-making and awareness. I like Herbert a lot. I don't know if I love Herbert. So just some of the... I don't know, does he have it? As stupid as that sounds. You know, like it's just... I think Elway will love him. I don't know if the Broncos will be going quarterback early, but if they love him, then I got no issue with it. You know, you got to keep swinging at quarterback. It's lottery tickets.
Yeah, I think really to me, I would give Locke this year just because the 2021 class is so much looking more dynamic than this one. I like Justin Herbert, like you said, but I don't love him. There's times where you watch him and you're like, oh my gosh, this guy, just amazing. And then it's like there's a switch that goes off halfway through the game where he starts panicking in the pocket, starts not having the accuracy that you saw in the first half. There's just some things that start happening that you're going, this is a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde kind of thing going on with this guy sometimes. And there is some injury history there as well, so you got to worry about that. Are the Broncos going to have a good enough offensive line to block for this guy? Like I said, for me right now, I'm more leaning Locke 2020. Just give him a year, see what he can do. If not, 2021 looks like a great quarterback class. If so, boom, you got a guy to build around. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Alrighty, moving forward now, one of my favorite potential picks for the Broncos, number 5. Andrew Thomas, offensive tackle, Georgia, 6'5", 318 pounds, 5.1140. Yes, Andrew Thomas is offensive tackle 2 for me, with Wirfs 1 spot higher, spoiler alert. But the Georgia left tackle has the talent to be a top 5 pick in any draft. While he is a dominant in pass protection with quick feet and shock absorbers for hands, Thomas has also been terrific as a run blocker, shielding running lanes and eliminating second-level defenders. Folks, Thomas or Wirfs, your offensive tackle, I got no issue with it. I know Bowles is playing better, but watching Baker Mayfield struggle and revert back to bad habits because the offensive line is bad despite being surrounded by weapons, and then watching the Colts go into Kansas City and bully the Chiefs, it's got me thinking offensive line again. We've come full circle. And, you know, Bowles hasn't done enough for me to warrant that. If the Broncos are picking high enough to get Andrew Thomas or the next guy we're going to talk about, I have no issue with it. I like Wirfs slightly better. Maybe it's the bias in me, but he's younger. I think he's a better athlete. I think he's a better zone fit, and I think he's more versatile. But I would be ecstatic with either one. So Andrew Thomas, number 5.
For sure. I mean, like I said, this is one of the better tackle classes we've seen in a while.
At the top, I don't think the depth is great. I think there's a massive drop-off.
That's true. I think there's some unique players in the mid-rounds.
Trey Adams scares me, and Alaric Jackson is okay, but he's inconsistent. There's 2 tackles at Auburn that are okay, but I think that these first 3 are the crown jewels.
Yeah. If Walker Little comes out, that'll be an interesting one as well.
He's a guard. He's a guard.
Okay.
I don't think he's a tackle.
But getting back to these guys, if you can get one of these 2 guys, you definitely plug him in there to the left tackle spot, and you feel very good about it. You feel like this is going to be a guy that's going to be your left tackle, barring injuries, for the next 10, 15 years, and feel very good about it because they're both great pass blockers and run blockers. They both have pretty darn good technique. I think Thomas is a little bit further. I mean, he's had a little bit more experience and just a little bit more refining, I guess, in his time at Georgia. But like I said, I think Wirfs does have the higher upside. But even with that higher upside, you're still looking at a guy that's going to be day one a better player than what the Broncos have at either tackle spot right now. And I like James, but Wirfs, I think, would be day one a better tackle. And you're looking at a guy, I mean, I guess we're kind of talking about both of them right now. But both of them in the run game, I mean, they are bullies. These are people that want to move people. They want to take the life out of a defender. And you got to love that. And it'd fit in great with what the Broncos want to do of establishing that run game. But again, they're both long. They're both strong. They can hold up in the pass game. And like I said, you just plug and play them and you don't worry about that position for a long time.
Well, I guess I just might as well read number 4 here. Tristan Wirfs, offensive tackle from Iowa, 6'5", 320 pounds, and 5.08 40 projected. With Trent Williams choosing not to play for the Redskins this season, he has instead returned to college and is playing tackle for the Iowa Hawkeyes. Okay, not really, but Wirfs is playing like a young Trent Williams with his mix of power, athleticism, and technically sound hands. Folks, I'm in. I thought we already talked about it a bit, but might as well just double back-to-back Iowa years, folks. I mean, if you can get Tristan Wirfs, the thing is, I think he could play, let's say, oh no, we have Bowles who's playing better, we paid Juwan James. I think Tristan Wirfs, you can plug and play at left guard or right guard as well, and he will dominate that first year. He's so powerful. And then both Bowles, probably not getting the 5th-year option, and James, who has a 2-year option after the first 2 years of his deal, can be moved on from. And then you move Wirfs to either left tackle or right tackle. I really, giving Drew Lock the best shot and making this offense tick, especially if we're going to be going this Kyle Shanahan offensive line has to be better. And I think that Wirfs is the guy that I would go with.
I'm on board for either, but like I said, I do probably have Wirfs a little bit higher just because, one, I think he has more ability to play left tackle, right tackle, and like I said, can move inside. I think Thomas can do those things. Just, we've seen Wirfs do it.
Yeah.
We've seen this year, I mean, I guess it's not really a lucky break, but getting to see him actually play left tackle for a couple games was just amazing to see. And I thought he was just as dominant as a left tackle as he is a right tackle. And so definitely those are two guys that I have very, very high on my personal board right now for the Broncos.
Alrighty, well, I'm going to read 3, 2, 1 here because we're getting long. Broncos could be looking at any of these guys. The top 3 players on Dane Brugler's big board. Jeffrey Okudah, cornerback, Ohio State. I received several surprise responses when Okudah cracked my top 5 in the preseason board, despite only one career start, but his blend of length, physicality, and read and react quickness are really impressive and why he continues to ascend as a player. Awesome player. Number 2, Tua Tagovailoa, quarterback, Alabama, the lefty, 6 foot, 232, 4.78 40. No, I don't think Tagovailoa will be the consensus top quarterback for next year's class. He won't be for everyone due to his size and average arm strength, but for me, his anticipation, timing, and improvisation skills separate him from the rest of the pack, making him quarterback 1 at this stage process. And number 1, two Ohio State players in the top 3. Chase Young, edge rusher, Ohio State, 6'5", 270, 4.76 40. Once the 2019 draft ended, Young was the clear number 1 draft-eligible prospect for the 2020 class. Over a month into the season, he's only improved and widened that gap between him and the next non-best quarterback in April's draft. I don't think the Broncos are going to be in a position to get Young. I don't think Tua Tagovailoa is going to be Elway's guy. I'll just leave it at that, whether or not they should. But Jeffrey Okudah, I'm very intrigued. He's showing ball skills this year. Still need to see a little bit more as far as his zone ability, but man, I would love to have him. I know that cornerback is a need for this team. Chris Harris probably out the door. If Okudah's there, I would be hard pressed to not take him at this point. The only guys I'd probably take over him at this point in the realistic realm is those 2 offensive tackles we talked about.
I'm here with you. I mean, the guy has pretty much everything you want at the cornerback position. Broncos have a huge need at cornerback. I think it's bigger than people realize. I mean, Chris Harris, he's not having the best season. I mean, he's still good. Don't get me wrong. But beyond him right now, especially with Bryce Callahan injured, we don't know when he's going to get back or what he's going to be when he gets back. And behind him, there's just a lot of youth. And I'm not saying that they can't grow or anything like that, but you still need that true number 1 cornerback. And Okudah, he's one of those guys, I think he could step on the field and be a top 5 cornerback as a rookie. And so when you got that, especially he's got that height, he's got the weight, he's got the speed. I mean, he's got the ability to go make some plays in both the run and pass game. And I think right now, if Vic Fangio had his way, this would be the guy that he adds to the defense.
You're probably right. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to Mile High Huddle, an affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Head on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment. Your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the Huddle Up podcast wherever you listen to your shows. You can follow us on Twitter at Mile High Huddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it. We will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.